In those days, the crest was in service to Steward Captain Auxilia of the Drift. Hartvale was founded in the aftermath of the Shrouding, when Elfheim was lost and the Fae who escaped that doomed land retreated into the shadows of our world. One of the ships that escaped the Shrouding of Elfheim was captained by a man named Artus Vixilio. He made landfall in the embrace of a mountain range and founded the first city there, the city that would become Hartvale. So the story goes, but I have traveled far enough to doubt the veracity of such an origin story. The Shrouding of Elfheim was a chaotic time, and few details are now known about those events. The important detail is this. Hartvale believes its first and greatest ship captain was a man named Vixilio, and they honor him by attaching his name to the war college that trains its officers. Any citizen who has completed their term of duty may apply to the war college, but as is often the case, gaining admittance is a feat beyond most. As such, only those who are fortunate enough to be born into money or who have found themselves a patron have a hope of making it. Unlike the more equitable stewards of the Drift, the officers who emerge from the Vixilio War College are trained to maintain the traditions of the city. Innovation is accepted, of course, if it can be proven to build upon the magnum opus of Artus Vixilio, on warfare and the scales of battle. But there is an unspoken expectation that demands the upholding of the city's political structure. The officers who run the college belong to old money and are well versed in politics. Crossing them could lead to dire consequences for the crest. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures. As always, I'm your game master and solo player, Steve Morrison. On this week's episode, Benn comes to an arrangement with the Shade and commits a little breaking and entering. Find out what happens on episode 6, Burglary 101. Benn looks across at the red-haired woman and says, "What is it? Why that look on your face?" She shakes her head and she says, "You are going to create so much trouble." He shrugs and kind of smiles a little bit and says, "That is what I'm here to do, of course. Tell me, who is this admiral?" The woman looks around as if expecting to be overheard, and she leans in a little bit and she says, "I know an admiral whose name begins with that letter, but I need to understand first, what are you going to do with this information?" Benn says, "I'm going to find out why this admiral is being paid off by the Vidala, of course." She shakes her head and says, "You're not going to go straight at this, are you? That would only cause more problems for everyone. For me, for you, for the city. This admiral is powerful, and if you go straight at her, she will take you apart. She will destroy you and your mercenary company." Benn studies her for a moment and says, "Who is this admiral?" The Shade takes a breath and says, "Her name is Elizabeth Welfren. Lady Elizabeth Welfren. She is one of the admirals who runs the college, and she is one of the most decorated naval officers still living." Benn, hearing the name, I think he recognizes it from before, and he says, Lady Welfren. Yes, that does make sense. If I remember correctly, she was always quite ambitious." The Shade looks at him and says, "You seem to know a lot about the officers of the War College and about the nobility, and I detect a certain hint in your voice that you come from that world. Who are you really? Because as far as I can tell, there is no Ben Weinstone who lives in Hartvale. That is a name that is not known to me." Benn looks at her and says, "When I returned to the city from my tour of duty, and yes, I did in fact serve, I knew that there would be those from my family who would wish to see me again, who would track me down. So I took a new name. It is not uncommon when joining a mercenary company. Who I was doesn't matter anymore. Who I am does. I am here to stop whatever the plans are that the Vidala have, because I can almost guarantee they are not good for the city. Based on the things that I witnessed on that drift ship on Danya, out in the harbor, whatever the Vidala has planned could have dire repercussions for the rest of us. So, who I am is unimportant, so long as you know that I have a vested interest in making sure that Hartvale continues to thrive. And I will do whatever it can, I will do whatever it takes to ensure that." The Shade nods and says, "All right, I believe you, oddly enough. What are you going to do now?" Benn looks around and he says, "I should look for evidence that can tie Admiral Welfren to the Vidala family. That way I can take that back to my people, and we can do with that what we do. We can gather this information and make careful use of it." The Shade looks at him and says, "You're playing a dangerous game here, Weinstone. If you're not careful, you're going to get yourself and others killed. You can't just go breaking into an admiral of the War College's office. There are protections in place to prevent such things. Magical protections." Benn looks at her shrewdly and says, "And can you help me?" She frowns and shakes her head and says, "No, I can't. This is beyond my job here. I suggest that you go home, that you go back to your mercenary company, and that you will go back knowing that I will pass this information along to my superiors, and we will watch the Admiral. We will make sure that whatever she is up to is not going to endanger the people of Hartvale. Walk away from this, Benn. Let us take care of it." Benn is going to hear these words, and I don't think he's going to walk away, but let's ask the fate chart. Let's see if he is going to do something foolish now or if he's going to do something foolish later. So I think it is unlikely that he is going to walk away from this situation. So I'm going to ask the fate chart. We're going to use the chaos rank from last episode, which is chaos rank of 6, and I think it is unlikely. Here we go. 59 is a no. No, he is not going to walk away. So Benn smiles at this and says, I understand that as a shade, it is your responsibility to defend and protect Heartvale, but I have my orders from my sergeant. I cannot simply walk away empty-handed. I have to bring something back. I wish to continue investigating the Admiral, but I will heed your advice that there are magical protections and that I can't simply break into the Admiral's office. But I cannot just walk away from this. Surely there is some middle ground that we can find, some way that we can work together that is equitable to both of us. The crest is new to Heartvale, and our leadership doesn't necessarily know all the goings on here. But also the Shade are a very known quantity to those in power, and wouldn't it be advantageous for you to have the assistance, the alliance of a mercenary company that could be useful to you in the future? Surely we can come to some sort of agreement that is beneficial for us both. She thinks about this, and I think we're going to have to make a roll to see if Benn is persuasive in this. So this is definitely going to be persuade with leverage. When you try to convince someone to do or say something for you by using something you have against them or offering to give them what they want, roll plus wily. My wily is +1, so I'm going to roll my 2d6, and we're going to find out what happens. 2 5s on the d6s, so that's 10, plus 1 is 11, so that is a complete success. So on a 10 plus, they will accept your offer and do or say what you want. So I think she listens to what he has to say, and she says, it would be beneficial to form an alliance between our organizations. I agree. Very well. I think we can work together, but we have to be very careful about how we go about this, because if the wrong people find out what we're doing, it's going to be the end for both of us. Benn nods and says, I agree. We should be careful. She says, we are going to have to make a plan for this. I will go and find out what the Admiral's schedule is. I'll meet you at your friend's brewery. We can talk more there. Benn nods and says, very well. I agree. He turns to go, and then he stops and turns back to her. And he says, you know, you have the advantage on me. You know my name. If we're going to be working together, I should at least know yours. And she says, Erdira. It's Erdira. And Benn says, a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Erdira. I look forward to speaking with you later. He's going to turn and leave the War College behind. So we're going to end that scene there. So we are no longer investigating the War College for Admiral W. We know who that is now, and we have formed a tentative alliance with Erdira the Shade, who is going on the character list, and I think we are going to go ahead and add on to our threads. I added a couple threads, one relating to the identity of the Shade, and one also about finding out who at the War College is working with the Vidala. So I think I'm going to remove both of those threads, and then I'm going to make a new thread, which is discover how Admiral Welfren is connected to the Vidala. So with that done, Benn is going to leave the War College. He's going to leave the Howl and head back into the rest of the city. Is there anything that we need to or want to do before we jump into the scene where she comes with the information? Do we even need to have that scene, or should we just jump ahead? I think it makes sense for Benn to probably go check in with Iron Gull at this point to let him know what's going on, because I think there is no reason for him not to check in and at least let Iron Gull know what's going on. So let's go ahead and take the chaos factor to 5. This is going to be our next scene, is check in with Iron Gull. And we are going to roll a d10, and we're going to check that against our chaos rank of 5. And I rolled a 4, which is underneath our chaos rank, which means the scene is going to change. And this is going to be an interrupt scene. So this preempts our scene. Let's go ahead and roll a random event here. So we're going to determine the event focus first. This is 3, remote event. Okay. And we're going to action and subject this. 66, carry, and the subject, 9, carry evil. As Benn leaves Wolfsong, we follow him for a moment as he passes out through the walls of the wealthy district. And as he passes through that gate, this imaginary camera that is following him pans up towards the sun. And it is bright and gleaming in the sky. And then it pans back down, and we are no longer in Heartvale. We are far away. The sea is still in sight in the distance, but instead of a bustling, full city, there's a small port town along the edge of the sea here. We see past the town, away from the sea, there is a set of foothills, and this camera sweeps across, and we see now a group of people emerging from an opening inside one of these hills. There are a dozen of them. They're all dressed in dark clothing, and they are pulling what looks like a chest out of this hill. And as they do so, there are one or two who are surveying and overseeing this operation. They are standing there and watching this. And as these people bring this chest out of this opening, they walk over and set it down before the two figures who are overseeing this. And these two figures are a man and a woman, and neither has very distinctive features. They have similar features to a lot of the people who live in the cities along the sea here. They have more olive-toned skin and dark hair, and they are looking down at this chest, and one of them, the woman, waves her hand over it, and the latch that holds the chest closed falls open. And she waves her hand again, and the chest slowly creaks open as if lifted by invisible hands. As the lid of the chest falls back and away, the pair of them look down into the chest, and they both smile. Now the man steps forward and reaches into the chest, and he pulls out what looks like a small idol of some sort. It has many legs and tentacles coming out of its body. And he holds it up, and those around these two who carried this chest out of the depth of this hill, they shudder, and several of them drop to their knees and begin vomiting as they look upon this idol. The man turns and looks at the woman, and she nods, and then he turns back to the others who are assembled there, and he says, "Good. Now go fetch the rest." And we go back to Heartvale, where Benn makes his way back to the crow's nest, and he is looking for Irongull. So as he gets there, does he find Irongull there? Is he at the crow's nest right now? So let's go ahead and ask the fate chart. I think it is 50-50. Our chaos rank is 5. Let's find out. 44, which is a yes. Yes, he is. So Benn walks into the crow's nest, and again, it's not all that busy. It's mid-afternoon, probably early afternoon at this point. He looks around, and there are a few members of the crest here, but it seems as though most are out and about. The captain is present, as he usually is, sitting at his table looking at several ledgers. There's no sign of the lieutenant, however. Irongull is present, and as Benn walks in, Irongull sees him and waves him over. Benn obliges and walks up to the Master Sergeant. Irongull looks up at him and says, "You're back. Good. What'd you find?" Benn sits down and he tells Irongull all of the things that he found. The ledger in the shop, he tells him about being followed by those 2 thugs in the street the day before. He tells him about Admiral Welfrin and the War College. And Irongull listens to all of this, and he says, "Well, this is worse than I thought. All right, you've done good so far, Benn, and it sounds like you've made an in with this shade. That could be good for us. I know the captain's been looking to make contact with the shades. So far, they've proven elusive. If you can get them to at least take a meeting, we'll see that as a victory. But I'm worried that these Vidala are going to know that we're poking around, and that they're going to go ahead and make some moves to secure their position." Benn nods and says, "I think that is quite possible, Sergeant. What should we do?" And Irongull says, "Now that we know there's something going on, I will assign some people to watch the Vidala. If they try to make a move, we'll know about it, and we can stop them." Benn says, "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to carry on with what you're doing. get into that admiral's office and get information back, but be careful. Your new friend is right about one thing. If an admiral at the War College finds out that we're spying on her, there will be plenty of repercussions for us. Benn nods and says, I will be discreet. That's what I hired you for. See that you are. And Benn is going to stand and nod to the sergeant and then head back out. So that ends that scene. I think that was a pretty straightforward scene with Iron Gull. I'm going to bring the cast factor down to 4 because Benn was in plenty of control with that situation. And we are going to go ahead and I think meet with Erdira at Merrick's Brewery. So that is our scene setup. We're going to roll the D10 and see what happens. 6, which is over the scene setup, so it happens as expected. Benn arrives at Merrick's Brewery and enters. He finds a table in the corner, and I think Erdira is not there yet. He is going to settle in and order a pint, and I think let's ask the fate chart if Merrick is there. I think it's 50-50, chaos rank of 4. Oh, 01, an exceptional yes. So not only is he there, but I think it's a relatively quiet day. And so he is able to come over and sit with Benn for a little bit. And because it's an exceptional yes, does he have any like further insight on the like merchant side of things that he didn't tell Benn or that he has thought of since the last time they talked? And I'm just going to assume that the answer is yes because of the exceptional yes there. So not only is he present, but he also has something meaningful and useful for Benn. So I'm going to roll on action subject to see what that is. 41. Expose. 39. Expose news. Expose news. Okay, so Merrick, I think in the intervening day since they spoke last, has heard some news about the Vidala. And I think what it is that they are in the process of hiring ships to go and retrieve a number of shipments that they have recently purchased outside of Heartvale to bring back into the city. And they are currently in the process of recruiting privateers, drift ships, whatever it might be, to go and retrieve these things. And I think Benn hears that and he wonders if that might indicate that they're going to try and bring in more of whatever it was that they brought on the Andanya. And so he files that away for future reference that maybe they're getting ready to move faster than he expected. And so he's going to look for some sort of like information on that while he is getting into the Admiral's office, if he's able to get that far. So I think that is the sort of beneficial knowledge that he gets from Merrick. And then a few hours later, Erdira shows up and she looks around, and it definitely seems as though she's being a little paranoid as she like looks around. She comes and like sits with him, and I think she takes out the coin and sets it in the middle of the table and like gives it a quick spin, and it sort of spins around a little bit, and then it falls on the Heartvale face side of it. And she looks around and says, all right, good. I don't think we're being watched. Now, I found out that the Admiral is attending a gala tonight, put on by one of the noble houses in Wolfsong. So she's going to be out of the office, and we should be able to get in tonight. But the doors are going to be locked and sealed with magic. Now, I think that I can get past the magic with my coin. But I'm no mage. I just have the tools of my trade that have been given to me by my superiors. It's often enough, but something to consider. We might not be able to get in if the magic is too strong for my coin to suppress. Benn nods and says, I understand. We can attempt it. Maybe, if you are willing to have company beyond just myself, I might be able to find another member of my organization who might have a little bit more ability with magic. She looks around and she says, I would rather keep this as limited as possible, but I can't put my finger on it, but something feels off about this. The gala came up very, very quickly. I didn't know anything about this gala, and usually I am keyed into these sorts of things. But this practically sprang up overnight. Do you think that it feels like a trap? She shrugs and says, I don't know. It could be, but I don't see why. There's no reason for the Admiral to know that there's anything wrong. I understand. Well, let me see if I can find someone from my organization who can assist us. Either way, we'll move forward. She nods and says, all right. I think they're going to spend the next hour or so going over the area around the War College and how they're going to get in and what they're going to do once they're in. They make their plans, and they plan to meet up shortly before the third bell in the deep hours of the night. And Urdira wishes Benn a good evening and leaves. Now, before we conclude this scene, I am going to go ahead and use the Call on Your Faction honor move to try and recruit somebody from within the crest who is a mage. And I'm going to spend 1 honor, because that's all the honor I've got right now. And I'm going to roll 2d6 plus that honor, and hopefully we are going to get some help on this. Oh, 2 1s plus 1 is a 3, which is a failure. On a miss, your faction cannot help you. The MC will detail why and will pick 1 from the list of consequences below. All right, so the list of consequences are: secrets are revealed, loyalties are shifted, status is threatened, channels are cut off, suspicions are confirmed, allies are put in danger. So I think Benn returns to the crow's nest and asks around for a mage to go with him. Unfortunately, they are all off doing other missions, except for the lieutenant. And I think when Lephalia hears that Benn is asking for a mage to accompany him on this mission, she approaches him and says, I don't see why you would have any right to ask for such a thing. Surely you wouldn't want to lean on someone else's merits so that you can gain your own status. If you want to prove yourself to me, to prove yourself to the crest, you're going to have to do it without magic. You're going to have to do it on your own. Good luck, fresh blood. Don't get caught. And basically, Benn realizes he is going to get no aid from the crest while Lephalia has it out for him. And he's a little bit in trouble on that. So he's going to, unfortunately, not have any magical assistance on this mission. So hopefully, whatever Urdira's coin does is going to be enough. So we're going to end the scene there, and we are going to increase our chaos rank to 5 again. And the next scene is going to be break into the Admiral's office. And I think we are going to go ahead and roll our D10. And I rolled a 10, which is well above our chaos factor. The scene is going to play out as expected. Benn and Urdira meet close to the War College, right around the 3rd bell. It's dark at this time of night, but there is a half moon. There's a crescent moon out, so there's a small amount of moonlight that is shining down. And because they are in Wolfsong, there are a number of lights on the streets. So there's a decent amount of illumination here. Benn had to basically talk his way past the guards once again. And this time he did, in fact, make concessions and pay them a bit of coin in order to get past without being hassled. As they are looking up at the War College, Urdira leads him around to a side entrance, and they are going to enter through this side entrance that she has a key to. They make their way into the War College's side hallways, where a lot of the support staff have like offices where they are, copying down orders and assignments and, sending them out to students or taking missives to the harbor for captains. All of the scribe work is done in this hallway. And Urdira leads them through. Now, I'm going to ask the fate chart right off the bat. Are they able to get in unnoticed? Is there anyone here who could potentially notice them? We know that the War College is guarded, but are there actually maybe some of the scribes and the other workers who are working late into the night, fulfilling their duty? I think it is going to be 50-50. 41 is a yes. So yes, there are people here still working late into the night. Just because the admirals have a lovely gala to go and party at doesn't mean that their assistants get the same luxury. So as they enter, I think there is firelight flickering in and through the doorways of a couple of these rooms. And I think as they're entering, they can hear a faint conversation going on in one of the rooms. As they get close to one of the doors, they can hear the scratching of a quill on parchment. and they are making their way through. And because of that, I think they're going to have to sneak along, and that is going to be a face duress. So Benn is going to roll plus steady here. I've got my trusty 2d6. Let's find out how stealthy Benn and Ordira are. 7 plus 2 is 9, which is going to be a mixed success. So on a 7 to 9, you flinched, stalled, or hesitated. I can pick one or two of the following and tell you what it looks like if you take it. So you can achieve your goal, but it'll come at a price. You can achieve your goal, but only partially. You cannot achieve your goal, but you can do something similar instead. I'm going to go with you cannot achieve your goal, but can do something similar instead. So I think one of the assistants comes out of the room as they are making their way down the hallway and sees the two of them. And they're going to stop and kind of start for a moment. And then in the sort of like dim light in this hallway, kind of squints a little bit and then obviously recognizes Ordira and is like, oh, Ordira, I didn't know you were going to be here this late. And who's your friend? And I think Ordira is going to attempt to lie and tell her compatriot there, this other assistant, that she is bringing this friend to see her office. And, there's a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge that goes along with that. And she's going to attempt to lie. So I'm going to roll on the fate chart to see how successful she is at lying. Now, she is a shade, which means that one of her jobs is to be able to lie and be sneaky-like. And so I'm going to put this at, it is very likely that she is going to be able to succeed. 3. So not only is it very likely a yes, it is an exceptional yes. So she is able to lie with no problem. And I think the other assistant kind of looks at Benn, looks back at her, sort of smiles a little bit, winks and says, oh yeah, I understand completely. No need to worry. You won't hear a thing out of me. And he's going to make his way by and disappear into another room. The two of them are going to look at each other and they are going to continue to make their way forward. Are there any other obstacles before they reach the door to the Admiral's office? Again, I'm going to say it's 50-50. 26. Yes. Yes, there is. All right, so let's roll on action and subject to see what that obstacle might be. 67. Open. 57. Tactics. Open tactics. So this is an obstacle and it's open tactics. Okay, so this is going to be, I think, a guard post. So they're walking through and there are guards patrolling the hallways of the War College. And as they are making their way through, I think once again, they come up against them. And I think Ordira is going to be like, we can be seen by Gregor, but we shouldn't be seen by the guards. We should do our best to stay out of sight. And I think they are going to attempt to hide from these guards and sneak past. Once again, a face duress plus steady. +2 on this. 9 plus 2 is 11, which is a complete success. So you achieve what you set out to do. So the guards are patrolling and Benn and Ordira are able to duck into a room and wait for them to pass and then sneak out and make their way through the hallways towards the door to the Admiral's office. Now, when they reach that door, Ordira pulls out her coin and she says, I don't know if this is going to work, but I guess there's no point in waiting any longer. And she flips the coin up into the air. It spins around. That faint light humming happens. she catches it in her palm and then presses her palm up against the door. And let's go ahead and ask the fate chart. I think in this case it is 50-50, because I think the admiral in this war college is going to have pretty good protections built into her office, but I think the magic within the shade coins is also pretty potent. So I'm going to say it's 50-50. Cast rank of 5. 63. No, it doesn't work. So, does it not work, or does it trigger some sort of warning or something like that? So I think the question is, does it alert the admiral to what's going on? This time I'm going to say it is, again, I'm going to say 50-50, because I think if the answer is no, that it doesn't alert the admiral, then I think that means that they're not able to actually overcome the magic. And so the magic remains intact and the door basically remains impenetrable. If the answer is yes, that it warns the admiral, I think that's because the magic fails. The coin is able to overcome the magic, but the admiral is warned in the process and is probably going to either send guards or make her way to her office to check on it and make sure that it is not in danger. So 50-50. 22. Yes, the admiral is warned. So Urdira presses the coin up to the doorway and it shimmers and fades and the magic disappears. The door's locked still, but the magic disappears. But we now know that Admiral Wellfriend has been alerted to this, and I think that Urdira and Benn have no idea that that is the case. Benn is now going to try to pick the lock, and because I think there is a little bit of danger here, if it takes too long for him to pick the lock, they're going to have even less time to search the room. So I'm going to roll another Faced Arrest plus Steady plus 2. 5 and 5 is 10, plus 2 is 12, which is a complete success. So he picks the lock, no problem. They are able to get into the Admiral's office, and they are going to look through everything in here, looking for information on the Vidala family. So, what do they find? Do they find incriminating evidence here? I think it is very unlikely. I think because they are dealing with somebody who is skilled at political maneuvering and somebody who is a military officer, I think she's not just keeping records of money that she's taken from this merchant family in her office. So we're going to say it's very unlikely that they find anything incriminating. Chaos rank of 5. Here we go. 42 is a no. No, they do not find anything incriminating in the Admiral's office. Do they find anything important or useful? I'm going to say it's 50-50. 32 is a yes. So they do find something interesting. What is it that they find? 92 is vengeance. And 95 of nature. Vengeance of nature or vengeance towards nature. Okay. So they are looking through the papers in Admiral Wellfriend's office, and I think they find a letter, and Urdira looks at it and she kind of glances over it real quick and then tosses it to the side and says, it's just personal correspondence. and continues looking through everything else because it didn't seem to have any noticeable information in it about the Vidala family. But Benn picks it up and is looking at it and reading it in the firelight. And I think a name catches his eye, which is Auxilia, the steward captain of the Drift. The Drift have these stewards. They are the captains of their ships. And the steward captain is the basically steward who has been elected as a sort of head of the organization. And so steward captain Auxilia is the person who hired the Crest to take this job to go investigate the Andanya, and ostensibly is still paying them to find out what happened to the ship. So this name triggers a curiosity in Benn, and he's reading through this letter. And I think what he finds is that there was something between them, between the Admiral and Steward Captain Auxilia. Friendship or a relationship of some sort, and it didn't end well. And I think as he is reading through this letter, it's probably from Auxilia, and it's basically a litany of like, these are all the reasons why we can't continue like this. I'm sorry, but it's over. And I think Benn, looking at this, he sees that it's an older letter, like it's been around for a couple years, and it's well worn in several places where it's clear that she, the Admiral, continues to handle it and look at it. And as Benn is looking at this, he then thinks, like, why would she take payment from the Vidala to change the shipping rights to a drift ship if she has this relationship or this, damaged relationship with the steward captain of the Drift? Suddenly he wonders, does she know what the Vidala are doing? Is she complicit because she wants to hurt Auxilia? There's one more question we have to ask. Do they get out before the Admiral returns to the War College? Let's ask the fate chart. I'm going to say it is 50-50. Chaos rank of 5. Here we go. 85. No, they do not get out before the Admiral returns. Benn and Erdira are rifling through the contents of the Admiral's desk when they hear footfalls racing down the hallway. They look at each other, and Erdira moves over to the door and sort of peers out and listens, and she says, "Someone's coming." Benn runs over to the window, and he grabs it and moves to open it, but it stays shut. Because though her coin overwhelmed the magic on the door, it didn't unseal the magic on the rest of the room. Benn turns back to Erdira and says, "Well, it looks like we're trapped." Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thanks so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please tell anyone and everyone in your life about it. And if you haven't already, please rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really does help others find me. If you want to interact with me, my handle on Instagram and Twitter is @ErrantSoloPod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.